right, welcome everybody to this Vibe Coding in Finance webinar. We're gonna give people, 30 seconds to a minute to join before we get started. Jamie, this session is going to be recorded. We'll share the link with everyone that signed up via email. I hope that you stay with us, but the session is gonna be recorded. As we wait for some people to trickle in, if you want to comment in the chat, where are you calling in, where are you dialing in from? We'd love some interactivity. Good afternoon, Daniel. Thanks for commenting there. All right. Okay, we're gonna get started, but yeah, please keep it interactive, comment in the chat, ask questions. I'm gonna be keeping an eye on the chat. I'm gonna be also, our marketing team is behind the scenes, making this possible, and they're also gonna be checking the chat and answering. So yeah, without further ado, let's get started. First of all, who am I? I'm Albert, co-founder and CEO of Aleph. Aleph is an AI native FP&A company. Before starting Aleph, I started my career in finance at Procter & Gamble. I was a consultant at Bain. And then I went to business school here in the US and started Aleph. As a consultant, I did a lot of presentations. I did some estimates with ChatGPT/Cursor, and I think we put the number at 742. But the more interesting stat for this conversation is how many presentations where success depends on an LLM behaving consistently. That number up until today was 0, and now it's going to be 1 after today. So bear with me. This is very, very vulnerable, and a lot of things can go wrong, but hopefully it will just make it more fun, if anything. One disclaimer before we go into agenda and how the structure of the webinar is going to be. If you came here because of this LinkedIn post, one of the things that you would see there is the no slides, no theory, just hands-on finance and AI. Our marketing team went rogue and overpromised. I never said I was going to do no slides. As a proper consultant, I did not endorse this post. As a proper consultant, I think I love my good slides. I think they're pretty helpful in setting the tone and the framework. But I do promise that it's going to be only a few slides, and then we're going to go and actually vibe code. But I'm saying vibe code. I use this term maybe like 5-10 times in the conversation already. Some of you might not even know what vibe coding is. So what is vibe coding? This is, when you think about where vibe coding comes from, it can all be traced back to this tweet from Andrej Karpathy. Andrej was a co-founder at OpenAI, left a long time ago, but still being very involved in the tech community, in the AI community. And here he's describing how this idea of vibe coding, that's roughly this idea of you're describing what you want in plain English. The AI writes the code for you. And then you iterate, you review, you keep sending messages, you keep prompting, but you never touch the code. And I think that's, in essence, what vibe coding is. And I'm going to try to show you what this could mean for finance as opposed to engineers. That is where this originally started. As you can see, again, this was 1 year ago, February 2025. Things have only gotten better over the last year. So if it already felt magical and felt interesting 1 year ago, I think it's only even more impressive today. All right, so what we'll cover today, what the agenda is going to be. First of all, my framework for what you can vibe code. I don't think everything should be vibe coded. There's a lot of things that you should definitely not vibe code, and I will talk about that as well. The second one is where to vibe code. What are the tools that I use? What are the tools that you might want to use in the future? Third, and the most important part of the session, what our marketing team promised will happen, and we will build some things together. We will vibe code together. And then finally, we're going to do a very small section on how this ties to Aleph. I don't want you to think that I catfished you into joining this webinar, promising you nothing about LF, and now I'm gonna sell you a timeshare, and I'm gonna try to stick LF in the conversation. So it's gonna be very small. It's gonna be towards the end. If you want to leave and only listen the first part, I won't be offended. But that's gonna be how we're gonna end. Before we go into like my framework, I wanted to thank you all. There's a few hundred of you in the audience. We got 150 ideas submitted as part of the webinar form. I think many, if not all of the things I'm going to show you today came from your ideas. So first of all, thank you for making my job easier when putting together this webinar. Just to give you a glimpse of what people have actually been suggesting and recommending, I put together this image, this word cloud. You can see some of the common themes, but truth be told, I do think word clouds are terrible. I don't know how to read this. I don't know how you take any insight out of this. So what I did is I actually put it together into a few categories that made sense, at least for me. And these are some of those categories. So forecasting and planning, variance anomaly detection, unit economics, reporting. I'm going to try and do a few things. Depending on how LLMs work, it might go better or worse. But I'm going to try and cover a little bit of many of these. And those are some of examples of the actual things that you all suggested. There's going to be many that I won't get to cover. Maybe they are too complex to vibe code. Maybe we're on a round of time. So towards the end, as we do questions, I'm also going to take your questions on, I want to do this, how you would think about vibe coding this, and I can give you my approach and a more conceptual answer to those things that I'm not going to be able to get to. Before we go into the framework, one last thing, and then I will promise I will go into the framework. I wanted to give you a sense of things that I have vibe coded recently, and recently is in the last month or two. I probably vibe code, the team will know and tell you, I vibe code something every week, if not every day. So just to set you the right, frame of mind and get your ideas flowing, these are some real things I have done. One is an AI cost tracker. We didn't start as an AI tool, and AI became more of a core part of the product today. It's going well, which means that our AI costs are going out of control. So I have a small app that I built where I just vibe coded a cost tracker, and I made it easier to track those over time and see where were the things contributing to that. We are growing a lot as a company. We're hiring a lot. We're giving people equity as a venture-backed startup. So I have a script that I wrote to an agent that like combines Rippling and Carta, finds out who's missing a grant, and creates a CSP that I send to the lawyers for them to go and execute. We're iterating a lot on our go-to-market. Our pricing is changing. It's only going up. So if you're at the same time evaluating a LF, this is a good moment to become a customer. But I do a lot of like process and thinking of, okay, what's our pricing model? What can we change? How can we make it better? And I have done both a lot of analysis around that and also around ACVs, contract value, how our deal sizes are looking, and what predicts differences there. I did a headcount planner similar to the equity. How can we visualize more the plan through 2026? And finally, one of the things that I actually did that I think was really interesting was this presentation. That's certainly much more advanced than some of the other things that I would cover. But I think it's very interesting nonetheless. So I did this with Cursor. I will cover later what Cursor is. But just to give you a sense for it, this is what the setup looks like. The presentation is actually here. And I could either type or I could even use voice and say something like, can you add like the time that I took to vibe code all of these apps? The cost tracker took me 15 minutes, the equity reconciliation 1 hour, the pricing model analyzer 20 minutes, and all the rest other than the presentation took me 10 minutes. This presentation took me actually 3 hours. So I'm gonna pause and I'm gonna send that. And then I'm gonna let, cursor, in this case, the AI, do a little bit of its magic and see what it does. This is starting to get into the live vibe coding. You don't know what's gonna happen. A disclaimer here is that voice sounds for a lot of fun. I honestly would never use it with voice. I would probably, in most cases, just type. It's very rare that I actually would use voice for something like this. But as we're here, I can come back and I can like show you, we can go back to presentation. Here you see the presentation updating live and the AI actually adding this timing for each of those. So, I think did a pretty good job. I don't know if I would have much feedback. I would maybe, go and align. You see that like these are not aligned vertically. I would like give it some feedback and keep tweaking. But I think it's pretty good demonstration of how this can actually work. So I jumped a lot further ahead. That's very advanced. How do I actually think about what to vibe code, what to not, what tools to use? For me, it's less about the topic, and it's much more about how deep you want to go in the actual topic. So level one for me is things that I think I can one shot. One shot is a term that engineers use a lot of. I want to open a chat, write something, and I'm expecting the AI to be pretty good at achieving the goal only in one message without like much iteration. Reality is that it's rarely one iteration, so there's a bit of back and forth. But I start here saying, okay, I think I'm going to be able to do it in very close to one message. What does that share? It shares things like, okay, I don't need a lot of data. I might just paste it into a chat. Directionally right is good enough. Maybe I need a lot of precision. I'm not expecting to use this a lot. I'm expecting more of like to use it once and throw it away. My mental model is this idea of like a napkin math, like something that I want to scratch paper, I want to take a few notes, help think about this, and then move on. The next step is, okay, now I want something more than that. And there's many things that might take me to think about this as like a level two and treat it differently. It could be that there's more data. There's too much data to just copy paste in its storage. I need to trust this more. Like directionally is not good enough. I might want to reuse it and I want to automate some process. Um, and and I also need to be verifiable. So an example of this is this equity reconciliation that I told you. Even this presentation, I want to keep making tweaks. I want to be able to adjust it myself. I'm not going to just do that one shot. And then the third one is this idea of more production level system. Here I need things like I need live feeds from systems. I need it to be auditable. I need it to be always running, be defensible. In the next few years, hopefully Aleph will become a public company. I wouldn't vibe code our S1 filings. I would probably use this level 3. I would use very different type of systems for this. I know there's some of the questions that are coming up. So let me answer a few questions before I move on. Uh, so I think Shruti was asking like, can we do vibe coding in ChatGPT? This is going to be what I cover next, some of the different tools and where to do it. Scott, for vibe coding this presentation in Cursor, yes, this is actually all Cursor and it's being shared via Cursor. I can download it as a PDF, but this is all Cursor for now. And then Karen was asking about like InfoSec side of things, confidential information. That's going to be a big disclaimer later on. You should, check with your internal company policy. You should check what your agreement with like OpenAI, Claude, Lovable, whatever you say you're using is, and like make sure that you're doing this, within the constraints of what's actually secure in the context of the data that you're sharing. But people already mentioning in the chat certain tools. So before we go into tools, I want to say that this idea of the levels, I think it's a good framework for me mentally, but it's not necessarily meaning that each idea will squarely fall into one of them. When I think about that, I think about even the same idea, depending how far you want to take it, can have different levels. For example, a variance analysis, there's something very simple that you can do around just pasting a few columns and seeing the differences. One level up, you can just start to correlate with different drivers, understand what's moving, maybe put more data sources, like more granular data into it. Level 3 would be, okay, it's generating directly from my QuickBooks, NetSuite, Oracle, and it's happening automatically in month end. For forecasting, we can do some like trend lines. We can go from that to a multi-driver model, and then we can connect to Salesforce, HubSpot, make it ready for the board, and so on and so forth. I'm going to show you a few examples. I can talk as I go. I'm happy to answer questions as well. But I think this idea of things won't fall squarely into each category, I think it's important to have in mind. So where to vibe code? There have been a few questions around this in the chat. Some of you might be more familiar with some of these tools. Some of you might be less so. So the way that I think about this, first of all, I'm not a tools maximalist. I think the power here is mostly in the underlying models, the OpenAI models, Anthropic models working pretty well. That makes it so that any tool will work to a certain extent, and it's more about trying what works for you and what you prefer more than thinking that there's an absolute truth. But I would probably bucket things into three. I think the first one is just pure Claude ChatGPT. Very zero setup. You don't need a lot. You can get pretty far, probably further than you think if you haven't been exploring this in depth with just those. The second one is if you want to go one level up. I think someone was mentioning Lovable in the chat. I'm going to use Replit for some things today. I think this is interesting. Like, you can have a database, you can store data, you can make it more visual, more iteration. It's if you want to share something with the rest of your company, I think it's going to be something that these tools will give you the power. And then the third alternative would be going all the way to Cursor, which is what I was showing you, or something like Plot Code. This is, different level, full code base. This is what engineers use. Our engineers at LF use these tools every day to build the product that we put out there in the market. So some of you might venture into this, but part of the message is that you can get pretty far with just the two, and you can even further than you think with just Claude or ChatGPT. So with that, I think it's time to start building some things. And of course, first disclaimer is things might break. It's part of the fun. It's part of what I sign up for when the marketing team has this terrifying idea. Also, another disclaimer is I know there's a wide range of experience in this room. Here we have people commenting that Cloud Code is amazing. We might have some people that haven't even tested the limits of what ChatGPT or Claude can do. So I'm going to try and cater for everyone, and I'm going to try to show some of the more advanced tricks while trying to make this beginner friendly and explain things from the ground up. But please drop a note in the chat if you think this is too fast, too slow. I'm going to keep an eye. Our marketing team is also keeping an eye on the chat, and they might interrupt me if I'm moving along too fast. I would love for you all to leave today feeling that you can replicate some of what I'm doing in your own workflows. All right, so level one. Let's start with level one. The way this is going to work is I'm going to go and I'm going to try and build some things from scratch. I do have some cloths already there that I can show what the things might look like if it happens to fail for any reason or if it starts to get too complicated. But for the first one, I wanted to talk about this anomaly detector because I think something that many people brought up. It was one of the higher ranked answers in the chat. So I'm going to build a V1 of this. So in order to build a V1 of those, I'm going to start with a financial model. This financial model is a dummy financial model. It's one of our templates. It's a simplified version of one of our templates. This is a full 3-statement model. As you can see, P&L, balance sheet, cash flow, based on a lot of detail around revenue, headcount. It gets really sophisticated. For the purposes of this iteration, what I'm going to say is I have my model, I have my P&L, and I just want to make sure before I present these to the board, CEO, whoever you want to call it, I want to make sure that I didn't have any errors. So one of the things that before jumping into LLMs, one of my biggest takes here is that trends are much easier to spot when they are visualized. So it's very hard just quickly scanning this and saying, okay, the Cox people is too high or doesn't make sense. It's very easy to do once you visualize it. I want to give this to an LLM to visualize it, but this is a very complex model. So this is where you need to start developing some of the intuition. And my intuition would tell me, okay, you know what, like it's actually going to be better if instead of sharing everything, I'm only going to share the output and I'm going to paste it values because I care about the numbers. I don't care about the formulas. So I will start, I don't know, like I'm hiding some of the columns. What I'm doing here is I'm trying to make these, like I'm trying to make the LLMs and set them up for success as much as I can. So I'm going to do something like this, which is a simple P&L without many extra columns. And I'm going to go and say, I don't care about anything else. And I can call these my, PNL, PNL output. Once I'm there, I'm gonna open Claude, and I'm gonna attach this file to PNL output, and I'm gonna describe what I want. And there's a lot of importance here is the ideas are the thing that matter the most, and taking 1 second ahead of time, thinking what you actually want to achieve dramatically increases the odds of this working well. So what I want to say is I would like to create an artifact. This is the first code that is important. You're going to see and you're going to realize what this means. It's basically I want Claude to not just reply to me. I want to create something interactive that is going to open here on the right. And I want to say to validate whether my forecast makes sense. I would like to be able to have a drop down to select a metric, a row in the spreadsheet, and visualize it to spot trends or anomalies. So I could make this much, much better. I'm gonna try and start with as simple as I can. And I think that's probably another important comment here is the more you want to do a lot of things at once with LLMs, think about every decision that the LLM makes. Today, LLMs are pretty good and they have a 95 to 99% chance of making one decision correctly. If you ask for one decision, the odds that this is going to work are very good. If you ask for them to make 100 decisions before checking in with you and giving you guidance, those of you that are probability nerds understand that like that will severely lower the odds that this is going to work correctly. So I think like building iteratively is probably another important tip here. While this takes a little of time and it's building some of these artifacts, I want to see if there's any other questions in the chat. James is asking how much of a left itself is vibe coded. I would say, probably close to zero. I wouldn't recommend related to some of the questions around, production grade, security. I think you can use vibe coding to, guide you towards the answer. You can build prototypes, but I think it's important when you go into production level systems to complement that with people that know what they're doing, people that can see the code that is generated and can make sure it works. It works for sure. Yannick is asking, how would you embed automation tools such as N8N, or would you rather skip them and jump to Cloud Code? I don't think there's a good, I think the answer is you should do whatever is more comfortable for you. I think Cloud Code, I would think about it as it's like the most low level that it can be. It gives you a lot of power, but it's also harder to understand. It's harder to find errors and find mistakes. So I think there's a lot of tools where I'm very comfortable using Cloud Code. If I don't think that I need all of that power, I will always prefer a simpler tool that I know has less room for error to a more complex tool that is more likely to hallucinate. Any extra questions? If not, I will I will probably start something in parallel, just to give you a few. So one of the things I want to do is this I'm doing more internal. I'm like validating whether things work. I'm going to do one more of those. That is in here. I also have two data sets that are pure downloads from Salesforce around accounts and opportunities. I'm going to replicate one of the things that I say I had done that also people were asking and thought were interesting. That is doing the ACV contract size analyzer. So I'm going to repeat the same. I'm going to say, okay, Salesforce accounts and opportunities. Can you build a contract value analyzer, artifact? Key here to really point Claude towards an artifact for me. I want to have filters, have drop downs where I can select different regions, industries, quarters, or anything else you feel relevant. Display a histogram showing contract values for that subset. And then let me adjust like when you do histograms, how much you cluster things matters quite a bit. Let me adjust the size of the groups in the histogram. And those are things that, again, you might not think intuitively, but once you start iterating enough, you will, already pre-think that some of those are going to be helpful, and you will cut iterations. But again, there's a lot of this fine margin between the more that you can do, the more you ask ahead of time, the more likely it is for this to be wrong. All right, so now you can see we have our first artifact, we have our first forecast validator. And one of the things I can do is I can select any metric. So for example, Cox software, and I can see what's going on. And here you can see I'm already starting to get some insights that I couldn't have gotten from just the financial model. It seems like the Cox, it had a jump here. You can see it went from 94 to 250, and then it continues at that rate. It became much more obvious here. My main intuition, I always like to take things a little bit the next level. It's, okay, I want to do all of these, but this will take me a lot of time. I need to click and go and click. So I would do things like, can you add keyboard shortcuts to move across different metrics, like arrow up and arrow down to switch. And this represents my real workflow where I would actually be doing a few of them at the same time. And I would probably, in most cases, be multitasking, either doing this while I do emails or doing multiple of these analysis at the same time. And here you can see it's working. So while it works, I'm going to show you some of the things that I had done. This is something similar to the one that we did, but with more sophistication. Here we have one that is the same data. This is the same data that I was showing you over here. But what I actually did is I asked it to do purely a dashboard and a presentation. So this is just showing this the way that I would show it to an executive, and combining some charts and presentations with even some key trends and insights. I like this. I wouldn't trust it as much. I think like the best application of something like this for me would fall into that level 3, where I would actually want like something that is purpose-built for this. Okay, so now we should be able to have shortcuts. So now you see I can actually scroll through everything and be much faster in analyzing. And I see, okay, we probably should, I would take notes and give it back to the finance team and be like, all right, we should probably increase revenue stream 1. This forecast makes no sense. The same with revenue stream 2. This looks okay, and so on. As you can see, there's things, it moves around. There's a lot of things that if this were proper software, I would do differently. But you see how fast I got to something like this. We're gonna give this a minute, and if not, the idea is wanting to show you a few examples, wanting to show you the art of what was possible. But I want to make sure I have time to show you some of the more advanced versions as well. So we won't wait for it too long. All right, I'm gonna take our questions. Annie, what are the AI-related metrics that you see as relevant to keep track of or to measure ROI? That's a great question, and I think it's honestly it's hard. And the way I think about this, and when I think, for example, about what we spend in our LLM's cost, and everyone at the left has a Claude subscription and a ChatGPT subscription and a Replit subscription. I do think that there's so much about this that is experimentation that you kind of need to accept this as, part of this might have a clear ROI, but part of it you're just investing in, the team, in learning, in getting better, like, and to be able to maybe unlock something in the future. And I think that the ROI is never going to be like linear. And Kevin, Alice, a few people were asking about like the artifact. So if you look at Claude, there's the artifact is this side panel. This is the way that just Claude calls it. So if you see here, you can see even a list of artifacts, and you can start from there. So if you ask something else, you might still get an artifact, but given that I know that I want that level of interactivity, and that's what I'm looking for, it's just like using in the prompt, and even like things like capitalizing will make it more likely for them to use that. All right, this is gonna take a little bit more time, so I can, like a good cooking show. Oh, okay, so it's there. I was gonna say that I was gonna put it in the oven and take out the baked version, but sounds that we don't need to do that. So here you can see a lot of this napkin math idea. I think makes a lot of sense. Of actually want to see, I want to explore the data. These are buckets of 10K. Maybe I want to bucket it more to see better trends. This is a lot what I would use. I wouldn't use this as my weekly reporting process, but I think it's very helpful as I'm asking myself questions, and I have a lot of one-off analysis. All right, that's some of the examples of level one. I want to move on. I want to make sure that I can cover extra cases, but going back to some of the levels and what I was talking about, a lot of what this shared is there's very little data that is coming in here. You can see I'm not expecting to do this recurringly. The whole process of getting here was a little bit, hard coded. I had to, delete a bunch of files from my model. So I think there's a lot of limitations, but it's still a very powerful tool, and it's very, very accessible. So I think Rachel, Giancarlo, were asking a lot of things around, on the one hand, can you share this with people? The answer is yes, you can. You can actually publish this, and it becomes a link that you can share with people. Giancarlo was asking, can you integrate them directly in your model? Those are the things that you technically could, but there's a lot of effort involved, at least today, in going there. If you want to do something like that, that's where specialized apps. I know one called Aleph, but again, there's many. That's where I would go into more of the realm of, okay, you might want to get a proper SaaS in order to have like a fully connected end-to-end process. But that's a bit on level one. I'm gonna take a look at the chat and see if there's any other extra questions before we before I move on. Asger is asking, who holds the IP of the Vibe code you have created? Could you market, offer a subscription, or have created third parties? Very interesting question. I don't feel qualified to answer, and I would want to provide legal advice. But I think there's versions of it, without it being legal advice. When you start to go more into this level 2, I think there's version of it that could be more of a service and start to get more into it could be something that you can offer as a product. All right, So that's it for level one. Again, there's a lot of depth. The way that I show you the shortcuts here, I would probably keep tinkering and improving this another 20, 30 minutes in order to get to something that I feel, you know, is enough. But I'm showing you a bit of the how to get started and how to think about it. For level two, what we're actually going to do is one that was, it's a bit more complex. I think it starts to go into this idea of I want it to be more shareable and it's interesting. And actually, a few of you submitted this. But it's like a grant calculator. This is something that we do ourselves at the left for every offer that we do, and like the finance team owns it. And and where we start from is we have this stock option calculator, and like the B1 of what we did at left was very, very similar to this. All the numbers are dummy, of course, but it was here's your offer. Um, here's your offer. Here's what it might be valued at in some scenarios. And this is a fictitious company that is like Series A. So what I want to do is I want to go from this to something that is a bit more exciting, but I don't want to do it as a napkin math. I want to do it as something that I can actually make part of my process. So what I'm going to use for this is I'm going to use Replit. I'm going to open a file and I'm going to same start from my Excel file. You see very similar trend with what I was doing with Claude. And is can you build, and this one I would spend a little bit more time to run. Can you build a stock option total comp calculator that mimics the Excel I attached? It should take as inputs the offer details. It should know data about the company, and it should output different valuation and total comp numbers depending on different outcomes. I personally didn't want to do this. I personally didn't want to do this from like a copy pasted prompt. I would probably, if I weren't doing this live with a few hundred people looking at me, I think I can do a better prompt at this. But part of the idea is trying to show you that even without the perfect prompt, this will start to be interesting. So I'm gonna answer a few more questions while this goes. So Rachel, when you take it live, how's the data continuously updated? You will have to go back to Claude to add new data. The answer is yes. In like some of the level one options that I shared, you will need to like just drop the Excel file again. That's the part where it becomes a bit more manual. And I would think about, okay, I would actually, if you want to make it more repeatable, there might be better versions. Using something like Replit might be one of those, where for Replit, you could start building more complicated things. Like I want to have a file upload button, and I want to have that take an Excel file. And every time I update, I take an Excel file. I want it to create a new version for me. Those are the things that you can get to with some of these tools. That will be a little bit harder to do without. See the chat. Any more question? Yeah, Oliver was asking, is there any reason why you use Replit versus Lovable? I think I covered this earlier. All of them work pretty well. It's honestly, I think I started using Replit quite a while ago, and I'm more familiar with the UI. But I think it's probably whatever you feel more comfortable in. I think I will optimize for your comfort and your like user experience that speaks more to you, rather than always be chasing, okay, Replit might be 2% better than Lovable, therefore I'm going to switch and now I'm going to learn a new tool from scratch. Um, for Chris has a great question around what differentiates Aleph or tools from vibe coding tools. I'm going to talk more about that later on, Chris. So stay tuned, and I'm gonna talk about it in probably like 5 minutes as we move on from this. All right, we'll give it more time. If it doesn't output anything in the next minute, I will probably just like move on or like leave it running and then come back after. Uh, let's see if you have any more question while this waits. All right, I'm gonna actually show you. I did this in the past because I knew this one would take a little bit longer. I can show you some of the what the prompt looks like. You can see that I did probably 4 or 5 messages in order to get here. I can even share the entire conversation if anyone wants to email me and ask for it. But as you can see, what this does is I input my offer, gross salary, number of auctions, strike price, and vesting period. And I have some of the company info that I could edit in. If I were to share this properly, I would say, don't make company info editable and things like that. But what I can see is in different output scenarios, I can share this with people and they can know what their total comp per year, total comp for the 4 years might look like. And this is something that, again, I spent 5 minutes in. So it's like a few prompts across 20 minutes. And you can even, as you have an offer from someone, I can even copy share link. And this will share a link with this pre-filled for someone. So if I enter incognito, I even very, very easily put a password in it. The password that the AI generated was Aleph forever. I didn't choose that. And then you can see your actual like offer. So I'm gonna even put it in the chat if anyone wants to play with it. Again, password is Aleph forever. This is something that I built in 5 minutes. If you wanna do something like this, I would probably say 1 hour. You can get something very, very solid, just nudging the LLM. And you can see that this is even, we have the version that we started, which I would honestly maybe even like better than the one that I had before, where it's like easier to use and a little bit simpler. All right. So that's just such a simple example, but again, goes into some things that are more interesting, like I hide a password. This is something that you could roll out to the entire company if you wish so. And of course, you need to be mindful of some of the limitations around security and some of the questions that we were discussing earlier. So some of the learnings from level 1 and 2, I think the main one is this idea of the bottleneck is no longer technical skill. Anyone, regardless of technical skill, can get pretty far, and the right idea is what matters most. What's second to that is understanding feasibility. You can see that as I was talking about, I had a lot of intuition of, okay, this one I would like to add it at the beginning of the prompt. This one I will wait, I will see what the LLM does and then do it. There's a lot of that comes with learning. But I think and you will only get better at both of those by practicing. But my only encouragement is that the limit is higher than you think, and more things are feasible if you do them step by step than you would think. And I think the more encouraging part here is the idea of, you can just do things. And I think it's a very exciting time to be a knowledge worker and have all of these tools at our disposal. Things that might take a week of an analyst. Sometimes if you have the right idea and you approach it the right way, you can do them in like half an hour, 1 hour. So yeah, it's just like I'm at heart a techno optimist, and I think it's just a very exciting time to be working on these type of problems and having all of these at our disposals, and we're early. I think it's we'll tell our grandkids that we're vibe coding things when all of these started. So I think that's pretty powerful and interesting. And of course, the disclaimer: keep security in mind. Don't pay sensitive data. Have your eng team, your IT team validate some of these things that you vibe code before going to production. So we have 15 minutes left. When you talk about live coding level 3, this is going back, Chris, to your question around, what's different between Aleph and a full suite of vibe coded tools. I think for me, it's this idea of you could vibe code your way into production. You could say, I'm gonna, let's take aside Aleph for a minute. you could say, I'm going to take out Salesforce, I'm going to save that money, and I'm going to vibe code a CRM. You can do it. Do you want to do it? Is the real question. And the way I think about this is you're choosing between I, as a finance person, or I, as a RevOps person, I'm vibe coding and maintaining my own app, or I'm working with a vendor where the ones that are vibe coding, or not vibe coding, but the ones that are using AI to ship faster are my vendor's engineers. Who would you want to trust to build your architecture on top? And I think like that's really the thing. And again, it takes a lot of choosing the right vendors to partner with that understand and you think are going to be using that. But today, I mean, I'm a finance person at heart. I'm also CEO, and today I do encourage a lot our team to not reinvent the wheel. Like I think we're buying more software than we would have before AI, and that's because we see the power of this in our own product, and we think that like instead of me thinking about a problem CRM for like 5 hours a week, I want like an army of engineers that are thinking about that for like a long time. Um, so this biased, but I want to show you a few minutes on how some of the workflows work within Aleph, and then I'm going to do questions towards the end. And so I'm going to show you some of the building blocks. Some things are more interesting, more simple, and then I'm going to go into some of the more exciting, forward-looking. The first one is variance analysis. Again, Claude would be very good at variance analysis, but as I think Rachel was asking in the chat, you will need to copy paste all the time the numbers, and you need to start from scratch. So one of the things that you can do, you have a trended view like this, you understand what changed between March and April. You can just have an agent do that for you. And you can say, oh, you can say, okay, I want 10%, let's do 2% and 2K. Oh, sorry, I had this open for a while. Okay, let's do a question while I reset this. James was asking, how much time do you spend on Vibe architecting, thinking through a solution before committing to code? I think a decent amount is probably the answer. If I were to do some, and it depends on how it's a level 1, it's a level 2. The harder it is, the more time I would spend like ahead of time trying to figure it out. So okay, let me switch for a second and do this elsewhere. So I wanted to show you, this is the same idea. It's like a trended view, and I want to figure out the variance. And instead of doing it myself, I'm like telling the LLM to go and do it for me. And the LLM is figuring out those variances, and it's trying to get to the bottom of it. And as you can see, it takes a few minutes, but I can say, okay, if in legal services, your variance comes from one vendor called Lee and Associates. And if you want, you can like double click, you can drill down into this. I want to see the breakdown by vendor, and it will give me that vendor breakdown, and I can verify that indeed Lee and Associates is the one doing most of the work. This is good. It's very low level and it's very detailed. That's not the way that you would present it to your CEO or department lead. So you can also use AI to come up with explanations. So let's say I wanted to start this from scratch. I can say I want to summarize what I have in the chart, and I want to have the main variances in terms of vendors or departments. I can start to use LF to, again, a different agent that what it's doing is it's grabbing that data from the table and it's summarizing some of the main highlights. Again, this is made with like very simple basic prompts just to show you that doesn't take a lot. But here you can see the few vendor-driven swings, including this Lee and Associates tab is the one that we looked into. That's very simple. The way that you embed some of that into a workflow starts looking something like this, where now you're doing a variance analysis for a department lead. I don't think you should vibe code this. I think like tools out there like Aleph already have a lot of these built in. And you can use AI effectively by having a lot of these, low-level analysts going understanding, okay, in my actuals versus my version of the forecast, there's a gap, and it's mainly explained by AWS. And then you're able to, highlight that in like a summary, an executive summary, and you're able to go and communicate that in a way that department leaders will understand. So that's some of the AI that is there. And these is things that, Aleph customers are using today. But I do think that a lot of these, despite saving a lot of time, doesn't feel quite as magic as some of the things that I showed you, and I think the idea of vibe coding that is more natural language heavy. So I'm gonna show you some examples of things that are coming that like we're just testing internally, and our engineering team would like me to say that this will likely fail, but I think it's cool enough that I wanted to at least give you a glimpse of it. And this is the same dashboard, it's the same functionality. If you look into all of these, those are connected to your data live, are traceable. But here you can see like some sort of that, sliver of magic that happens in the clots, in the replets. So I can start by saying, can you put these two charts side by side instead? And I can start to prompt my way to making these dashboards better. And here I have an agent that has the knowledge of your data, has the knowledge of Aleph, that is able to do all of this. So you can see it thinking. This is more of my internal version that, like, you wouldn't see. And I can say, okay, yes, let me confirm. Let's start iterating. So I would say, okay, move these. Let's update the dashboard. Perfect. I see the headcount chart. It's not that great. Like the decimals are weird. I know why we have so much time. So can you filter the chart for 2025 and correct the labels and axis to have no decimals? So here I can see the same way that I'm doing with some of my vibe coding apps and vibe coding a dashboard. Unlike vibe coding apps, this is live connected to your data, will be there next month. You're gonna be able to like roll it forward and keep working with it. This is one of the things that we're working on, is making it much faster. So while it thinks, I'm gonna answer some of the extra questions. So let me go to the chat. So Jeff is asking, is user access account provisioning inside of a tool something that could be vibe coded? I would say it can be vibe coded for the replets of the world. It will be like less common for the clots of the world. All right, here you see it added too many filters. So we can say, remove the ear filter. All right, so I think like just to not take too much, I'm probably gonna end here. Again, this is pretty cool. This is experimental. And okay, we're back. Maybe we can add one thing. Can you add a list of closed opportunities by month from Salesforce as a table? So I can keep iterating. I'm not gonna go too deep in there. All right, I want to see. Oh, Walter flagged that I put 2026 instead of 2025. That's great, Cobel. Ian says that he likes the thinking. Appreciate it. Yeah, I think this is like just a little bit too verbose for what I would love to be, but like we're gonna keep the thinking, and that's honestly some of the people that are early testing this. The fact that they can see the thinking, they might tell us, like Walter pointed out to me, hey, it's wrong because you picked the wrong year. It could tell you a lot of those things, and yeah, and it can help you steer the model to the right outcome as well. So here you can see, okay, it's creating the chart, it's adding it there. Let's see. All right, Amarnath, are the prompts to the agent optimized for token usage? It seems like it's repeating information a lot. What are some of the techniques you have tried to reduce the token usage? I think we're not like some of what we're doing is more using different levels of model that are more or less expensive as a way to like speed things up. But we're not that much focused on optimizing for cost yet. We're really like trying to maximize for what's the best experience that can be. And I think like there's a lot that can be done, and there's a lot of proven techniques from other domains to make something that works very well. Make something that works very well, like just faster or better. Um, Okay, Nico was asking, can you import these dashboards to PowerPoint and have them be interactive rather than image-based? You can, this is, I'm answering a left specific questions. You can import them to PowerPoint. You cannot make them interactive in PowerPoint today. Part of being interactive is you doing them within a LF, and part of, outside a LF, it will be much more of an image. Kevin, can you publish this dashboard to a non-edit view-only audience? Yes, you can share this with any type of audience. There's a lot of like permission, like there's a very heavy permission layer that you can work on, and you can, we have a lot of like series of templates that you can use. This like VBA template I showed you is one of them. So there's a lot of power in that. Any extra questions? I think there's a few that I have missed, so I will also go back. Akil was asking, going back 1 second to the comp calculator, is how would you audit something like the comp calculator to make sure it works? I think for something that is high impact like this, something that it's important for it to work well, I would probably open it side by side with the spreadsheet, and I would make sure that it works under some of the assumptions. So I would do something like this and be like, okay, if I'm 145, okay, total comp is 152. Does it check out versus what I have here? Okay, it does, it doesn't. So I would like run a few iterations of that, but I would likely just verify inputs, outputs, rather than you could go into the code here in Replit. I would rarely do this. I think like I use this enough that I feel comfortable myself just doing with the inputs and the outputs. Alice was asking, does LF use Claude or a specific LLM? We use a combination of many things. We use like Claude, OpenAI, Gemini, like so the Google series, and some like small implementations that are ours. So a mix of everything. Select planning to branch out more to EMEA anytime soon. We do have a lot of customers in EMEA already. We're a US-based company at heart, but we support all regions, and we care about all regions equally. Alberto, fellow Alberto, is asking on the left variance analysis, are the variance commentaries shown as dollar in terms of the cost, or does it show impact in terms of gross margin? The answer is it's highly customizable, and you can set it up to answer different things depending on what it is that you want. All right. I know we have like 1 minute left. Want to be respectful of everyone's time. Thank you everyone for coming. We will share the presentation. We will share the slides. Yeah, thank you all.